Hello YouTube! As you can tell, I'm going to be talking about the 12 albums I purchased most recently from December all the way to as I'm recording this January 23rd of 2026. So without further ado, here we go. First one is Overnight Sensation by Frank Zappa, released back in '73. Got this at Manic Media, which is a used entertainment store down where I live in Glens Falls. It's got some very goofy, funny, complicated musically stuff. Like Montana, about going there to raise a crop of dental floss and just riding a horse. I'm the Slime is just a funny song that criticizes TV. A lot of songs here about sex related stuff, sadly, like Dirty Love and Dynamo Hum. And my fun fact about this album is that this album's hysterically juvenile cover art was drawn in the vein of Salvador Dali's surreal imagery, and it was done by a man named Dave McMacken. Next up is the reunion album from my all-time favorite band, Psycho Circus by Kiss, originally released in 1998. A lot of great songs on here, like the title track, I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll, the Ace Frehley sung Into the Void, You One of the Best Shines with all four members singing and contributing vocals. Obviously done in the wake of the success of their reunion tour, which was the biggest tour of 96 to 97. This is just one solid album, but doesn't match the level of classicness of their 70s stuff. And my very interesting fun fact about this reunion album is that despite being touted as the first Kiss album to feature all four original members since 1979's Dynasty, the contributions of Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were minimal. And as I said earlier, despite this, all four members do provide lead vocals on the album. Next up is another late 90s album that, along with this one, purchased for Christmas. Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. It's a very interesting concept album about the issues of past, present, while dealing with murder, suicide, with a couple of interesting characters like Nicholas and Victoria. The music varies from being soft and loud to just simple and angry. Through Her Eyes and The Spirit Carries On are just beautiful ballads, while tracks like The Dance of Eternity and Fatal Tragedy showcase the musicianship of the five people that make up this amazing prog metal group that I just happened to see live. My two fun facts about this concept album is that this album is a sequel to the song Metropolis Part 1, which was featured on their Images and Words album. And this other fact is very interesting. The static that closes this album at the end of Finally Free continues at the beginning of their next album, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. And this pattern persists throughout subsequent albums until 2005's Octavarium, with the same concept but different closing notes. Next up is an album that I'm really not familiar with because I'm not a big classical fan, but I was gifted to this by one of my dad's friends. The soundtrack to Walt Disney's Fantasia, done by Leopold Stokowski with the Orchestra of Philadelphia. Listened to this a couple times, got some interesting, most recognizable classical pieces like The Nutcracker, Dance of the Hours, which was done by Alan Sherman as his Hello Mata song. Got some beautiful artwork that corresponds with the fantasy film, like this. It's got some stories about all the pieces, like Battle of Spring, Pastoral Symphony. It's just kind of interesting. And my two fun facts about this soundtrack is that the recording of this soundtrack or collection of classical masterpieces was a pioneering effort in the world of multi-channel stereo recording, and that Deems Taylor provided all the commentary to the soundtrack's motion picture. Next up is the first time I've ever owned a vinyl album by this crooning icon, Frank Sinatra, Come Dance With Me. Listened to this a couple times and it's kind of interesting, but not sort of my comfort zone. The liner notes describe his vocals on this album are vocals that actually can be danced. Or if you're in the mood for listening, just sit this one out. Come Dance With Me is just quite the mambo-y bop. Bobbles, Bangles, and Beads kind of sounds like an interesting song title. My fun fact about this album is that out of the 59 studio albums Frank made, this one is his most successful, spending 2.5 years on top of the Billboard chart and winning the Grammy for Album of the Year at the 1960 Grammy Awards. Now this next album is not a regular album, but it's a very important one because of my faith. Power Over Temptation, a sermon done by Minister R.W. Schambach. Listen to this once. It's very interesting. It just talks about the liner notes about the story in Matthew 4 when Jesus led up with the Spirit into the wilderness and got tempted by the devil and how he fasted for 40 days and nights. And he just talks about how you can have power over temptation. Kind of very uplifting. Found this at my favorite record store for $5. Just had to get it. And this does not have a fun fact, this album, but I do have a fact about this guy. He was ordained as a pastor by someone named C.M. Ward, who was also a protege of T.L. Osborne, who was both an evangelist and faith healer. Next is a legendary half-studio, half-live album by a legendary Texas trio, Fandango by ZZ Top. The live side of this is quite interesting. Thunderbird, their rendition of Jailhouse Rock, and a backdoor medley that has some neat guitar and drum work. Studio side is obviously known for this song Tush, which is a staple of classic rock radio and a very upbeat, bluesy song about looking for a lover. And I think they made this live the year before, and it's just very interesting. And my fun fact about Fandango is that frontman Billy Gibbons has said in an album box set by ZZ Top that the live capture wound up being in the can first, and despite having enough material for one side of the record, they decided to make the unusual move of making this record half studio and half live, and turned out to be a winning combo for the Texas trio. Next up is the follow-up album to one of my favorite bands' album that made them big, Insomniac by Green Day, the follow-up to the highly successful Dookie. Very heavier and darker, like most bands do when making the follow-up. It's shown in songs like Geek, Stink Breath, Brain Stew, Babs You Will Who, 86, which deals with the band not being welcome from the clubs they played before becoming a household name. Brain Stew going into Jaded is just a epic transition, and like with all fast songs, I like to move my body. My two fun facts about Insomniac are that before deciding to name the album what it is, they had considered naming it Jesus Christ Supermarket and Tightwad Hill, which is one of the songs on here. And that the collage of all this stuff that's on the album cover was created by Winston Smith. And it was originally a painting done 13 years before the release of this album called God Told Me to Skin You Alive. Next up is one of the most legendary albums from one of the most legendary rock bands ever, Deep Purple, Machine Head. Very bluesy stuff like Highway Star, Lazy. Maybe I'm a Leo is sort of an interesting song. A lot of great keyboard work by, I really am not familiar with who does what, but very interesting album cover. And of course this album was home to one of the most beloved guitar licks and radio staples and songs ever, Smoke on the Water. And my fun fact about that said song and this album in general is that the band used the Rolling Stone Mobile in Switzerland for recording and block booked the Montreux Casino nearby, but it got burned to the ground at a Frank Zappa concert after an audience member fired a flare gun into the venue ceiling. After this incident, the band were forced to seek an alternate location, and these events became the inspiration for one of the most beloved and learned as their first riff on guitar sort of songs, Smoke on the Water. It's 3 more albums, and I got all these last week at a music shop down in Scotia with a Christmas gift that I got. A one-hit wonder act, Autograph, Sign In Please. This has Turn Up the Radio, which is an upbeat one about needing some more. And I was listening to some side one of this a little while ago, and it's got some interesting glam metal. This cover just shows how society today is being controlled by AI, and this predicted it 40 plus years before it even happened. My fun fact about this iconic 80s one-hit wonder album is that lead guitarist Steve Lynch described their biggest hit as a last-minute song that their record label RCA didn't even want to release because they thought it had no commercial value. The band firmly insisted, and it got granted inclusion on here. Next up is another not one-hit wonder band, and this is another 80s glam album. Bang Your Head, Metal Health Will Drive You Mad by the legendary Quiet Riot. Very wild, screaming stuff by Kevin DeBrau. I almost said Rudy because he plays the bass. Their cover of Slade's Come On Feel the Noise is just as anthemic as it was when my parents were growing up. Of course, the title track is just fun, shout. This is just a loud, crazy metal album that is also dedicated to the memory of their former guitarist and Ozzy's guitarist Randy Rhoads, who died the year before this came out in a plane crash. My 2 fun facts about Metal Health are that this is the first heavy metal album that reached #1 on the Billboard chart, which replaced the Police's Synchronicity, and that due to this album's commercial success, this album's regarded as the catalyst that paved the way for the hair metal craze that would be big throughout the next couple years after this came out. Okay, my most recent purchase of the 3 that I feel is the most interesting, because I know some people that are part of this organization, even my high school friend Jackson's mom, who owns Special Olympics New York, is a very special Christmas, and that even though the holiday season has passed as I'm recording this, I had to get this because it's a compilation that's filled with many wonderful artists and many wonderful covers. Whitney Houston's Do You Hear What I Hear? John Cougar Mellencamp's I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. U2's Baby Please Come Home. Madonna's Santa Baby. Bob Seger's Little Drummer Boy. It's just full of great covers and just shows how big a deal this was in '87. And that this was a fundraiser for the Special Olympics. And this was made for that purpose, which I didn't know about till last week. So the moment I saw this in the shop, I was like, I gotta get it. It's full of 15 iconic 80s holiday covers. And my interestingly fun fact that I kind of semi-said earlier was that this fundraising holiday compilation has raised millions of dollars for the Special Olympics and was exclusively made to benefit this sports organization. So anyway, those were the 12 records I purchased between December 2025 and January 2026. Let me know if you like any of these or you find the concepts of any of these albums interesting. I hope you learned something new about Green Day or Kiss or even this fundraising album. Thanks. Bye-bye.